Greater than he stood at my door after 10 long years. Same eyes, same voice, but to me, he was a stranger. I froze. My hands trembled. My heart didn't know whether to forgive or to remember. 10 years of silence, 10 years of waiting for a knock that never came. And now, here he was, the son who once promised to never leave, standing in front of me, carrying guilt instead of flowers. I wanted to scream, to cry, to ask him why, but all I did was whisper inside my heart, "You came back, but you're 10 years too late." I'll never forget the sound of that knock. It wasn't loud, it wasn't rushed, it was gentle, like someone asking permission to return to a life they once destroyed. For a moment, I thought my mind was playing tricks again. It does that sometimes when you spend too many years alone. You start to imagine the sounds you miss most. But when I opened the door, I froze. There he was, the boy I once tucked into bed every night, now standing before me as a man I could barely recognize. His hair was longer, his eyes heavier, and his clothes carried the dust of too many empty roads. He said nothing at first, just looked at me, as if my face was both familiar and foreign, like an old photograph he'd seen 1,000 times but couldn't touch. And then, almost in a whisper, he said, "Mom." My breath caught. That one word, after 10 years of silence, felt like both a wound reopening and a prayer being answered. But I didn't rush to hug him. I didn't cry or smile. I just stood there, frozen between anger and love, between the past and the moment I had dreamt of for so long. "You look older," he said, forcing a small smile. I wanted to tell him, "You made me older." Every sleepless night, every unanswered letter, every birthday candle blown out in silence, they all carved the years into my face. But instead, I stayed quiet. My heart was beating too loud for words. He shifted awkwardly, looking down at his hands. I noticed the scars, rough, healed over, like the kind life gives when you've been punished enough. "I didn't know if you still lived here," he said softly. I wasn't sure you'd want to see me." I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I wanted to say, "I waited for you every single day." I wanted to ask him, "Why didn't you come sooner?" I wanted to tell him that every time I heard footsteps outside, I prayed they were his. That every time the phone rang, I hoped it was his voice. But instead, I said something I never thought I'd say. "I think you have the wrong house." The moment the words left my mouth, I felt them cut through me too. His face fell, eyes wide, filled with disbelief. "Mom, it's me. Please, don't do this." I didn't move. He took a step closer, desperate now. "It's me, Daniel. Your son." The name echoed through the hallway like a ghost I'd buried years ago. I turned away slightly, blinking back tears. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said quietly after a long pause, his voice breaking, "if I've made a mistake." But I could hear it, the tremble in his tone, the way guilt wrapped around every word. He knew. He knew I recognized him. He knew I was pretending not to. The silence between us grew heavy, like the years we lost were standing right there, listening. And in that silence, memories flooded back. The night he left, the slammed door, the echo of his words. "I don't need you anymore." I had waited so long to see him again, to hold him, to tell him how much it hurt. But standing there now, I realized I didn't need to say anything. The pain in his eyes told me he'd already spent 10 years hearing my silence. He looked down, nodded slowly, and whispered, "I understand." And as he turned to leave, I felt something break, quietly, like glass cracking under the weight of time. I wanted to call out to him, to say his name, to tell him that the door was never locked, that it was always waiting for him. But I couldn't. Not yet. He needed to feel this moment, the same way I felt it the day he walked away. And so I let him go, watching him walk down the same path he once stormed down in anger, only this time, slower, smaller, broken. When the gate clicked shut, I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, he came back, but not the same. Sometimes pain doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the ones you gave your whole world to. I still remember that day as if it's trapped inside the walls of this house. Like every corner remembers the argument, the slammed door, the silence that followed. He was only 17, old enough to think he knew the world, but too young to understand what love costs. That morning started like any other. The sun had barely touched the curtains when I heard him packing. I thought it was just for school, but there was something different in the way the zippers closed. Something final, something cold. Daniel? I called from the kitchen, my voice still half asleep. Where are you going with that bag? He didn't answer. I walked into his room, and for a moment, I saw my little boy again, standing there, staring at the floor, his shoulders heavy with anger. I'm leaving, Mom, he said, his tone sharp without hesitation. I froze. Leaving? For where? Anywhere but here. My heart dropped. I thought it was a joke. I laughed nervously, waiting for him to smile, but he didn't. You don't mean that, I whispered. You never listened to me, he said, his voice rising. You never cared about what I wanted. You just tell me what to do, who to be, how to live. I'm not your project, Mom. Those words cut deeper than any knife. Because I realized he wasn't angry about rules or curfews. He was angry because I tried to protect him too much. I stepped closer, trembling. Everything I did was to keep you safe. You're my son. No, he snapped, tears filling his eyes. I'm your prisoner. He grabbed his bag, stormed toward the door, and I followed, begging. Daniel, please. Don't go like this. You'll regret it. Just talk to me. He turned back one last time, his face red, shaking with emotion. I'll never regret leaving, he said. The door slammed, and with it, everything I knew about love collapsed. The echo stayed. For months, I'd wake up expecting to hear his footsteps, his laugh, his voice calling for breakfast. But all I got was silence. Long, aching silence. I wrote letters, dozens of them. None were answered. I asked neighbors, friends, anyone who might have seen him, but it was like he vanished. People told me, he'll come back when he's ready. But years passed. Birthdays came and went. The candles got fewer, my hair got grayer. Every night before I went to bed, I'd leave the porch light on, just in case he ever tried to find his way home. Sometimes I'd dream of him, a little boy again, running into my arms, and I'd wake up crying because dreams are cruel that way. They remind you of what you've lost, but never let you touch it again. And so I built my life around memories. His old room became a museum of silence, his photographs untouched, as if time itself was waiting for him to return. I forgave him 100 times in my prayers, but every time I heard a knock, I still asked God, is it finally him? Until yesterday, when that knock came again, and the boy who left as a storm returned as a shadow. The night after he came back, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying that moment at the door, his eyes, the tremble in his voice, the way he looked older but somehow still like my little boy, I sat by the window, the same one I used to stare through years ago, watching the rain slide down the glass. Each drop felt like a memory, falling, fading, gone before it could be caught. I wanted to hate him for leaving. I wanted to stay angry for all those years he took from me. But every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was the little boy who used to run down that hallway, calling, "Mom, look what I made." And then, just as the clock struck midnight, there was another knock on the door. My heart stopped. I hesitated, my hand trembling as I reached for the handle. When I opened it, he was standing there again, soaked from the rain, shivering, holding a small box in his hands. He didn't say a word. He just looked at me, eyes glistening under the porch light, and said softly, "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. For the first time in 10 years, my son walked back into this house. He looked around, slowly, carefully, like every corner held a ghost. His gaze stopped on the family photo hanging by the stairs, the one where we were both laughing, back when life still made sense. He smiled faintly. "You kept it." "I kept everything," I whispered. We sat in silence for what felt like hours. The rain outside played its own sad song, and the house, once filled with anger, now felt small, almost fragile. Then he opened the box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, folded neatly, stained by time. My hand shook as I picked one up. It was my handwriting. "You got my letters?" I asked, voice cracking. He nodded. "All of them." "Then why didn't you ever reply?" He took a long breath, tears forming in his eyes. "Because I couldn't," he said quietly. "I didn't deserve to." His voice broke, and I saw a pain in him that only years of regret could create. "I read them every night," he continued. "Every single one. I wanted to write back, but I didn't know how to say I'm sorry after everything I said, after the way I left." I looked at him, unable to speak. The boy who left with anger was now a man drowning in guilt. "I thought I hated you," he said. "But I was just scared. Scared of failing you, of not being enough, of never living up to what you wanted me to be." His voice trembled as he reached into the box again and pulled out a small, worn photograph, the last one we took together before he left. "This," he said, holding it up, "was the only thing I kept. Through everything, the bad jobs, the sleepless nights, the mistakes. I carried this because it reminded me who I used to be, before I hurt you." Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. I had waited so long to hear his voice again, but now every word felt heavier than my heart could bear. "Why now, Daniel?" I asked softly. "After all these years, why come back?" He looked down, silent for a moment. Then he whispered, "Because I'm dying, Mom." The room went still. Even the rain seemed to stop. My breath caught, my world spinning. What what did you say?" His eyes filled with tears he couldn't hide. "I didn't come back for forgiveness. I came because I didn't want to leave this world without seeing you again." My knees weakened. I reached for the table to steady myself. My voice barely came out. "No, no, that's not true." "It's true," he said softly. "The doctors said it's too late. I've made peace with it, but I couldn't. I couldn't go without telling you that I'm sorry." I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face. The years of anger, silence, pride. They all shattered in that one moment. "You stupid, beautiful boy," I cried. "All I ever wanted was you. Not your perfection, not your success. Just you." He knelt beside me, holding my hands, both of us shaking. "I know," he whispered, "and I was too young to see it." We sat there on the floor, mother and son, surrounded by old letters, broken time, and 1,000 things left unsaid. The truth didn't heal everything that night, but it opened a door that had been locked for 10 long years. And sometimes, that's where forgiveness begins. Morning came without warning. The rain had stopped, but the world outside still looked washed in sorrow. Streets shining, trees bending under the quiet weight of dew. I sat beside his bed, watching the soft rise and fall of his chest, each breath slower than the one before. The doctor's words echoed somewhere far away, a blur of numbers and hours. But I wasn't listening to science. I was listening to my son. He slept with the box of letters beside him, one hand resting on it, as though even in dreams he needed to hold on to our story. I traced the lines of his fingers, the same ones that once built toy airplanes, that once wiped his tears after he scraped a knee, that once pointed at the sky asking, "Mom, do you think heaven is real?" I wanted to tell him I finally believed it was, because if heaven existed, it had to have room for lost love that found its way home again. Hours passed in silence. When he opened his eyes, there was a faint smile. "You're still here." "Where else would I be?" I whispered. "You should rest." "I've been resting for 10 years," I said. "Now I just want to sit with you." His lips trembled into a smile. "I used to think you were unbreakable." "Maybe I was," I said softly, "until the day you left." "I thought leaving would make me strong," he murmured, "but it just made me smaller." I brushed the hair from his forehead. "Then stop shrinking, my son. Come home inside your heart." He closed his eyes, a tear sliding down his cheek. "Mom," he whispered, voice thin as breath, "thank you for waiting." "Always," I answered. We talked through the dawn, about the days he missed, the people he met, the mistakes that taught him mercy. He told me how he once saw a boy on a street corner hugging his mother, and how it made him cry because he realized what he'd thrown away. "I wanted to turn back," he said, "but I didn't think I deserved your doorstep." I took his hand, pressing it to my heart. "You were always welcome here." Pride was the only lock. The sky outside turned golden. The first light of morning crept through the curtains and fell across his face, painting him in the colors of forgiveness. "It's beautiful," he said, looking toward the window. "Yes," I whispered. "It's the first sunrise we've shared in 10 years." He smiled faintly, his eyes growing distant, peaceful. "Then let's remember it." His breathing slowed. I leaned close and said the words I had held inside for too long. "I forgive you, Daniel, for everything. Go home, my love." His fingers tightened around mine one last time, and then they loosened. The house fell silent. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, holding his hand, feeling the warmth fade like the end of a song. Outside, the birds began to sing, timid at first, then louder, as if the world itself was trying to remind me that endings are also beginnings. I looked at the sunrise, bright, endless, and whispered, "You're free now, my son." And so am I. That morning, I finally turned off the porch light, not out of sorrow, but peace, because he had found his way home, and I had found mine, inside forgiveness. People think forgiveness is a gift you give to someone who hurt you, but it's not. It's the key that unlocks your own cage. For years, I lived behind invisible bars, trapped in old memories, in questions that had no answers, in letters that never came. I told myself I was waiting for him to change, but the truth is, I was waiting for my pain to stop mattering. When I saw him again, older, fragile, apologetic, I realized something that I had never understood before. Love doesn't disappear just because time is cruel. It bends, it bruises, it hides beneath anger, but it never dies. I spent 10 years thinking I was punishing him by staying silent. But silence only punishes the one who listens to it. And when he said he was dying, my anger vanished like smoke in the wind. Suddenly, nothing he had done mattered more than the simple fact that he was still my son. Broken, repentant, but mine. Forgiveness didn't erase the past. It didn't bring back the years we lost. But it gave us one thing time could never steal: peace. After he was gone, I walked through this house differently. The silence didn't hurt anymore. His room, once a tomb of memory, now felt like a promise, a reminder that love can outlive even death if you let it. I found the letters he couldn't send, half-finished words, some smudged by tears, some by rain. The last one simply said, "Mom, if you ever read this, please know, I never stopped being your son." I folded it gently and placed it in his box, next to all the ones I had written to him. And for the first time in a decade, I smiled. Because I realized something beautiful. Forgiveness doesn't change what happened, but it changes what lives inside you afterward. It replaces pain with peace, regret with understanding, anger with gratitude. We spend our lives chasing apologies that may never come, waiting for the people who hurt us to make it right. But sometimes, the healing starts when we stop waiting. Sometimes, you have to forgive them, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to be free. Every sunrise reminds me of him, not the boy who left, but the man who came home, carrying all his mistakes like gifts wrapped in humility. And every time the light touches his photograph on the shelf, I whisper, "You made it home, Daniel. You finally did." Maybe that's what love really is. Not perfect, not painless, but eternal. It waits, it forgives, and it finds its way back, no matter how long the road. So, if you're listening to this and holding on to something heavy, a betrayal, a goodbye, a silence that's lasted too long, I hope you let it go. Not for them, for you. Because life is too short to wait for someone to knock on your door. Sometimes, the forgiveness you're waiting to give is the only way